Hello, and welcome to Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older, the podcast where I talk about growing older not as a burden, but as a badge of experience, of wisdom, of survival. And today, I'm going to be talking about a heavy subject, something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Maybe you have too. Especially in the last 2 weeks, here in America, we have seen a lot of upheaval, for lack of a better word. We had another school shooting, which is becoming commonplace now. We had the tragic murder of a political spokesperson. Now, whether or not you agreed with this person, and I'm going to leave my thoughts out of it, we have to remember and understand that violence as a way to silence someone you do not agree with is never the answer. Maybe you did agree, maybe you didn't agree with Charlie Kirk. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But the fact of the matter is, we're supposed to be living in a land where freedom of speech is a given. It is one of our rights. And you can't just eliminate people and stop listening when you don't agree with something that the person has said. And I'm going to say that also about a couple of entertainers, and because that's what they are, people who make us laugh. They make jokes. Lenny Bruce, a comic that many of you might not know if you're younger, certainly George Carlin, were silenced in their careers, put into jail because of what they said, because they used language that at the time was not acceptable. And eventually, it was proven that they had a right to say it. It might not be what people wanted to hear, but it was something that they could say. The recent removal, or should I say, future cancellation of Stephen Colbert, a late-night host on CBS, and the removal of Jimmy Kimmel for an undetermined amount of time from his show on ABC, simply because they were saying things that the current administration did not like, is not acceptable. It isn't. My God, the number of comedians who made fun of Richard Nixon, of Jimmy Carter, of Gerald Ford, Chevy Chase, his entire career initially on Saturday Night Live was based on making fun of one fall that Gerald Ford once had. Johnny Carson often made fun of Jimmy Carter, being a peanut farmer who became president. You didn't remove them from the air. If you were smart, you laughed along with them, no matter if your feelings were hurt or not. But we have become incredibly sensitive in this time in our lives in this country, in America. And I have to wonder, if you're listening from somewhere outside of America, what your feelings are about it. Because I will tell you, a great amount of our population on both sides of the political aisle are frightened right now. Of course, there's one faction that isn't, because things are going exactly as they think they should. They think that certain rights of sexual preference, of gender identification, or of being able to speak your mind should not exist in some situations. And there's another part of the country that's very, very frightened. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. It feels like America is coming apart at the seams. There's division, there's deep division, there's fear, real and imagined. The censorship I just spoke of from the government, sometimes from corporate, sometimes from the court of public opinion. And there is that creeping concern that freedom of speech, one of our most sacred rights, is under threat. Now, if you're listening to this and you're over 60, maybe you're 70, maybe you're in your 80s, you're probably nodding your head and thinking, yeah, I felt that, Bill. But I can tell you, if you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you're also feeling it. But I wanted to tell you something, and I want you to really hear me. This is not the first time that we've been here. And if we keep our heads clear, our voices strong, and our values steady, it won't be the last time we get through it either. So today we're going to take a little walk through history together. We're going to remember the fires we've already walked through, fires that looked like they would burn this country down, but they didn't. Let's rewind to the 1770s. The American colonies were boiling with fear and rage. The British Crown was taxing people without giving them a voice. Free speech? Back then, that could get you arrested, or worse. It wasn't just tea in Boston Harbor. It was treason. But a small group of citizens, most of them farmers, tradesmen, printers, they had the courage to speak up, to organize, to fight not just with muskets, but with ideas. That's how America was born. That's how this experiment started, not from agreement, but from conflict with purpose. Now let's fast forward almost 90 years, and what do we see? Brother against brother, state against state. The Civil War was not just about slavery, though slavery was at the heart of it. It was also about power, rights, and fear of losing control. There was rampant censorship, especially in the Confederacy. Newspapers were shut down, dissenters were jailed, and yes, even the Union restricted speech and press during wartime. You think today's political divisions are bad? Try watching hundreds of thousands of your countrymen kill each other over the ideas of freedom and equality. But the nation survived. Barely. And slowly, painfully, it began to heal because people, again, had the courage to keep working toward the ideals that this country was founded on. In the 1950s, a time many of us remember very well, Senator Joseph McArthy stood in front of America and said that communists had infiltrated the government, Hollywood, schools, you name it. There were commies everywhere, according to Joe. The result? Fear, paranoia, blacklists, censorship, careers destroyed over a rumor. You didn't need to be a communist. You just needed to be accused of being a communist. It was an attack on free speech, and it came from inside our own walls. The press was intimidated. Neighbors turned on neighbors, friends turned on friends, co-workers turned on co-workers. Sound familiar? But guess what? That too passed. Brave journalists and citizens stood up. Eventually, the Senate itself condemned Joseph McArthy. The pendulum swung back. It always does, but not without people pushing it. Skip ahead another 10 years, the 1960s, and then into the 1970s, a time that many of us lived through as young men and women. Vietnam was not just a war overseas, it was a war at home. Young people protested in the streets. Some burned their draft cards. Some burned flags. Many were beaten or arrested. Some were killed, like at Kent State and in Chicago. There were those who called protesters un-American. There were others who called the government fascist. It was messy. It was loud. It was painful. It was scary. And yet, again, from all that noise came real change. The war ended. The voting age was lowered. The civil rights that had been granted in the 1960s were strengthened. America was once again tested, but it didn't fall. And then came September 11th, 2001. The whole country watched in horror as those towers fell. We were united for a moment, grieving, shocked, but that unity did not last long. Soon came the Patriot Act, wiretaps, surveillance, airport screenings. Muslims and people of Middle Eastern descent suddenly became targets of suspicion. Once again, people started to ask, are we trading away freedom for the illusion of safety? I ask you again, sound familiar? We still don't have all the answers about that time, but we lived through it, we learned, and we adjusted. So what feels different today, and what doesn't? Because here we are in 2025. Social media makes the noise louder than ever. The news is constant. The fear is thick. Left versus right. Fact versus fiction. Cancel culture. Political violence. Talk of civil war. It's easy to feel like we're hanging by a thread. But if history teaches us anything, my friends, it is this. We have felt like this before. We have been afraid before. And we've always found our way forward before. To those of you who are older, here's where we come in. Because if you're like me, you've seen decades of American life. You have seen presidents come and go, wars start and end, movements rise and fall. You know that panic passes, that extremes always burn themselves out. And you also know that silence is not strength. As older Americans, in my opinion, we have two responsibilities right now. One, reassure the younger generations that we've survived worse, and we will survive this too. Two, speak up. For truth, for dignity, for the people who don't have a voice. Whether it's speaking against censorship, calling out injustice, or simply refusing to fall into hate, we have the power to calm the storm by standing tall in it. And if you're wondering how, let me offer this. Start by listening more than you speak. Tell stories, the truth of what you have lived through. Vote your conscience, not your fear. And remind others that democracy is not a machine. It's a garden, and it only grows if we tend to it. My friends, through all of this, I don't mean to minimize the fear or suggest that we simply sit back and wait for time to heal what we're going through. Hopefully you're hearing what I'm saying, and that I know people are scared. I'm one of them. People are uncertain, but again, we've been here before. We've been through the fire. We carry scars that younger folks don't yet understand, but those scars, they're kind of an armor. And right now, America needs every one of us who remembers the long view, who can say with authority, yes, it is hard, but we've made it through worse, and we'll make it through this. Let's be the calm voice, the honest witness, the living proof. Thank you for joining me on this talk today. If this episode meant something to you, share it with someone younger, or better yet, talk with someone younger. Tell them what you lived through. If you found value in this episode, tell your story to a younger person. Many of them are afraid. In their lifetimes, they've never seen what is happening today or tomorrow. Let your voice be heard. History proves we can overcome anything together. At this time, my friends, I'd also like to ask you, if you enjoyed this or previous episodes, please be sure to hit that like button, leave us a rating or review, leave us a comment. You can scroll down into the notes and leave me a voicemail on the SpeakPipe tool. And be sure you hit that subscribe or follow button on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Until next time, this is Bill Monty, and this has been another page and chapter in your guide for getting older. But more than that, I hope this has been your guide for staying strong. And as always, I remind you, my friends, be safe and be kind.
If it's warm outside but you're feeling colder, not sure what to do without a friendly shoulder, you're not alone, so start feeling bolder. Welcome to Bill Monty.